Shalom, friends! Welcome to Orange Socks, a podcast celebrating Jewish creativity. I'm your host, Yitzchok Moully, inviting you to join me in exploring the soul of Jewish expression. Shalom, friends. Good morning. Yitzchok Moully here, again in the Orange Socks studios. First time through the internet with a guest from Israel, and I have here Avraham Vovsi. Avraham,
Hi.
I'm so excited to have you on.
It's really, really good to be here. I'm excited.
Yes. So we share Australia.
We do.
We do.
Although
We
it's
have
been
that
a
in
while
common.
for you, right?
It's been a long while. We
Yeah.
share painting, or we share creativity.
Sure.
We
Painting
share
as well.
we share Judaism.
True.
So we got a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
So let's start with Australia. Well, let's start with what's your creative background and your
Sure.
Judaic background and how they interplay between the two.
Sure. I don't know which is the shorter one, but whatever.
We got time. We got
We
time.
got time. Okay, cool. So I grew up in Australia. My mom and dad originally from the US.
Okay.
So I'm the only Australian in the family. And my joke is that now that I've made Aliyah, I might always be the only Australian in the family. So,
Okay.
so I grew up there. I grew up in Melbourne, I guess, outside of the Jewish community. So that's like one part of my Jewish story that is that, I guess being from immigrant family, as in my parents moved to Australia, so I didn't really have like extended family around, and I wasn't really in the Jewish community so much. And then also just being Jewish in Australia, it was this whole thing of just feeling very.
What was that like? So you weren't part of the community, but what was your Jewish identity? What was your parents' Jewish identity that they gave you?
Well, it was enough to know that I was Jewish, so like it was a good start. I went to a little Reform shul. There's like I might be the only. There's like two shuls outside of the Jewish community in Melbourne.
Right. So
Are you
what
Sydney or Melbourne?
I'm from Melbourne. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So we grew up like in Kew and Baldwin, and it used to be. I think when my parents first moved there, it was like the tail end of the Jewish of a part of the Jewish community being there, and they kind of all moved east side, and we stayed because of the shul.
Right.
I think. And so I went to a non-Jewish school, and we did the chagim at home. Mom put them on. Dad didn't grow up very observant, so it was mostly on mom. I went to shul a bit. I did my bar mitzvah, did a reform like bar mitzvah when I was there. And then that was it. I was like, the day after, I was like, okay, done. So
I
guess
a typical...
the thing about I didn't go to I don't remember why exactly. Maybe it's something about being a Jew in a non-Jewish school. It all felt very like hard.
Right.
It was,
right.
And I didn't. So I ended up not going to the summer camps and stuff like that, which meant I was again kind of separated.
More out of the community.
Totally.
So how'd you go from there to
Aliyah,
in Israel to Aliyah?
Right.
Well, first your 6-month journey in Israel, your Ba'aretz body of work. How did you get even from Australia, from not being part of the Jewish community to wanting to get to Israel? But I think maybe even before that, what's your creative journey?
Sure. Well, okay. So because they really intertwine, really. So just to finish, so after the bar mitzvah thing, I would say my Jewish identity I definitely was the Jew. I knew that I was Jewish in the sense of like, I used to say the Larry David, Jerry Seinfeld sense of being Jewish, but the more I learn about Jerry Seinfeld, especially these days, I'm like, oh man, he knows. He actually knows quite a bit about, like he keeps, in terms of what he puts out there, it's not so Jewish, but like in terms of who he is. So I can't use that example anymore, but I guess that's what I mean is I knew a lot of the cultural references, especially as an American Jew. So I had a lot of that stuff, and that's what we grew up around. Mel Brooks. So that, and I don't think I ever hid the idea that I was a Jew, but because I didn't have the religious practice or the communal practice or the cultural practice, really, it was just kind of, it was this thing.
Right.
So I was always creative. I think, which is lucky. My parents were very supportive. I actually was in film first. So
Yes. I want to talk about that.
Yeah. I grew up making films. I was like of the age that I was like 9 when iMovie, that Mac program was like invented.
Yes.
And I think that was like a changer for
That
everyone,
changed
right?
everything. Yeah, absolutely.
Changed everything.
I remember
And so
those
that
days.
was right. And it was
Yes.
huge. So I was 9. I was making, all me and my friends did would make videos. Then as I got through high school, I started convincing my teachers to let me like hand in video assignments, instead of like an essay if I could, which was pretty fun.
Wow.
I went to a kind of a hippie school, so they were able to be a bit flexible there.
Work with you.
Yeah. I got a for that bar mitzvah, I got a camera, so it was really that set me on my path. So I was doing that, and I really felt like I was, that was my creative output, and I guess so in the sense of like I've always sort of had the habit, for lack of a better word, of being creative. Like it's the lens. No, what's the lens I see the world through? It's just like
sure.
Toolbox that I use. So it's.
Did you go to art school? Were you interested in going to art school? Would your parents,
Sure. I was just doing film, and what happened? I was doing film, and I didn't get into the film school I wanted to go to, so I was doing my own stuff. It's a bit of a long journey, but I moved to LA for a couple of years to work in film. And then in LA, I was like, I found that I was really interested in the sort of art department area. So at this point, I had no drawing skills. I had no art skills of that stuff.
Wow.
I had like photography skills and video stuff, and I guess graphic design and things that there's stuff you do in the world of film. So I had some of that. Sure. But yeah, basically, the quickest version to this story is I was thinking I want to do more art department stuff, and so it would be this is in film, so it would be handy if I could draw. And so basically, I was kind of sick of LA for a bit. It was pretty intense, and the school is way cheaper. It's free in Australia. It's like subsidized by the government. So I went back to Australia, and that's when I did art school. So I did art school kind of like a little bit later. Okay. With the idea to learn drawing or to learn, like to do concept art or storyboards or something related to film. And that's where I found painting, basically. So in art school, I just tried everything. I applied myself to like learn, life drawing and everything, just because I didn't really know. I had this like space, it's school. It's a space to open yourself up and try something new. Absolutely. And I just got totally hooked by painting. And I was really burnt out by film because of that experience in LA. So it was this thing of like, I couldn't do film anymore. And suddenly I found this thing that it must have hit some neurons or some memories right in the back of my head, and I was like, oh, wow, this is like what I want to do. I've just got completely obsessed with it in this way. I don't know when I realized this, but, like film is very creative, and you can make really beautiful art with it, but it's logistically really complicated.
Yes, and film is a lot more of a collaborative process. I mean, you need so many people.
Which is the best part about it and the worst part about it. Right.
Yes, absolutely.
Right, because it's so good. I mean, bouncing ideas off other people is amazing, but
and that finished product, when done right, is just wow.
It's incredible.
Yes.
But like waiting on other people or waiting on money or what, it's just, and so I think one of the things that really hooked me on painting, like maybe not the first thing, because stylistically and artistically I was hooked already. I was interested in it, but just like it's so the first year I found painting right at the end of my art schooling, and I have a mentor. There's a teacher there who kind of was like, hey, I can help you out if you'd like. And boy, did she get what I just called her like every day for like.
You got your money's worth.
I still do.
Incredible.
And so in that first year, the first 3 years after school, I painted 30 portraits a year for 3 years. So I painted 90 portraits.
Wow.
And it was just like that thing of like, I don't have to wait for anyone. I can just make a million mistakes, and I can push myself to get better. So I think that's something that really hooked me, like moving from film into painting, I was like, wow, this is just, I can just kind of go for it.
Well, you can just do it. You could just sit down and do it.
Right.
And something that I never knew of all the greats is like so many self-portraits.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, like, are they really that vain? Are all of them that vain that they all like? Yeah. And then someone said to me, you don't need a model. You don't need anyone else. You put a mirror there and you're just painting. So this is all you got. So you paint yourself, but it's not about, which, the way I look at creativity, I didn't go to art school, is that there are three basic elements to all forms of expression, in my opinion. And there's what you say, there's how you say it, and how you share it with the world. Yeah. So how you say it, you seemed like you were pretty knee deep in portraiture.
That's where I started. That was the thing that hooked me. I think maybe it's because I came from film. So it was this storytelling. So portraits are kind of.
So that's so what came first? Is it the telling of the story of the subject, or was it the technical, the desire to learn to paint portraiture? And then how did Judaism impact that?
Right. Totally. So if you imagine my journey is like Jewish stuff and then the creative stuff, and then we'll come back, and then they kind of mash together here at the end, or not the end, but
it's not the end. It's not the end.
Not the end. Just the start. So actually on that idea, this is really cool painter that I like. He's Israeli. He lives in New York. His name is Ken Goshen. He said this thing. He said there's 3 levels of appreciation of art. I don't know if it's his quote or something he got from someone. I want to do the correct. There's a Jewish thing. It's
you say something in the name of the person who said it. You bring Gula to the world. Yep.
Exactly. That's the one. I remember when I first learned that, I was like, this is.
And I got that from Pirkei Avos.
Pirkei Avos. That's where it comes from. Thank you.
I think so. Yeah. If I'm wrong, I'm in trouble. But
I love that. I love that idea so much. It was really, it's so cool. So, 3 levels. Level 1, and this is not about I don't think it's about like how good the levels are, but it's maybe in terms of experience needed. So the first level is the appreciation of subject.
Right.
And then the next level is the I'm going to screw it up. Subject, observation, and then technique. So if you think about it, these are the building blocks.
So this is start again from an artist's perspective, looking at their subjects.
It's from an artist's perspective, making art, or looking at the subject, or it's from the viewer. Either way, it's the same.
All right.
So the easiest thing to appreciate, because it's is the subject.
Okay.
It's like the building blocks of like.
Sure.
You're looking at some art and you understand the subject. I can appreciate it. This is what it is. Cool. And so as a painter, also that's like probably where you're drawn first. Maybe it's like it can be that's the base level, and then you build up, and after that is observation. So it's not about like the person and who they are. It's about the observation of the thing that is a person.
And the context, that
the way the
painting
light
is set in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All that stuff. And then the third kind of most complicated level, just because it requires the most technical knowledge, is going to be the appreciation of technique. Because for the viewer, they need to know how it's done to appreciate it. And for the artist, it's maybe what comes after experience, like after you do more. So to answer your question with that quote, when I started, it would have definitely been the subjects. I remember it used to be, for sure. That's where it started. I liked the aesthetic, but I struggled a lot at the start, because I was just mixing colors took a long time. Just like the technicality.
The technical is very technical, right?
Very technical, which appealed to me, but didn't make it easy. And as I've gotten more experience, I do really appreciate, like, I don't know which I'm up to now, but I'm starting to appreciate just the observation of like the way light falls on things and being that's just really interesting. Like I've been doing little landscapes recently, just and then these little scenes, and it's much less about, for me, I'm noticing it's much less about the subject. It's just a view here in Jerusalem, which is beautiful, but it's more about the way the light falls or whatever. Right. And then
the context of that is also, it's just a little scene in Jerusalem, but it's so powerful that there's a Jew coming back from having the opportunity to just sit and just paint, a little portrait of a hill in Jerusalem that is ours to paint.
Yeah.
So all that context is
which is really interesting. I'm with none of these, just like a good Jewish conversation. There's no points being made. We keep opening up more like that. Even that idea. So just to sort of skip ahead a little bit, but it's interesting. The first landscape I ever did was here in Israel. I spent 7, 8 years only painting portraits and thinking that I didn't like landscapes.
Right.
And then I come here, and because of the context, suddenly I'm like, wow, I got to paint some portraits. I got to paint some landscapes.
So if I can attempt to,
let's try.
Let's try
for the listener.
So what were your early subjects? What drew you in after you left film? After you left film, which subjects, what subjects, or what about the subjects drew you in that you felt compelled to create their portraits?
So I went from a very again, let's see if I can remember the quote to credit properly. It wasn't like a quote, but I read that Picasso in his life made 18,000 pieces of work.
Yeah.
And of the 18,000, I think it was something like 8,000 paintings. So I thought to myself, when I finished school.
Oh, okay. No, I thought
you were going to say sculptures and sketches.
I thought you were going to say a different point, but go ahead.
What was I want to know your point was.
No, my point is that he made so much work, thousands upon thousands upon. I have heard a whole lot more paintings, like
could be
80,000. I don't know. It's like some crazy huge number. We only know of a handful that are like, oh, this is Picasso.
Yeah.
But it's about volume. It's about just getting out there and doing and creating and
And so I had that in mind, and also I was a mature age student, and so there were a lot of people in my art class that were like drawing since they were 12 or 6 or whatever, and I wasn't. So I felt kind of felt a bit behind. I love this thing that I just discovered, but I'm
You don't know how to get there.
I don't know how to get there. Well, I do. Volume. Right? So,
yes, sir.
That was my mentality. That's why I did 90 portraits in the first 3 years. So basically, all of which is say, I painted it started with whoever. So it was people around me in Collingwood where I was living. I would talk to like business owners. I had this thing where I just was painting and giving away the paintings because I was like, I don't want them cluttering up my space.
Right.
I don't want to charge people. I had a day job. Because if I charge people, then there's an expectation of some level of quality, which I can't guarantee because I don't know what I'm doing.
Right.
I'm just learning. So I wanted to be just like pressure free, as many paintings as possible. And it led me indirectly back towards my Judaism. So it was just kind of people around, people that I liked, people that had interesting looks. I was in Collingwood, so it was very hipster. So I learned a lot of paint a lot of people with tattoos or whatever. It was just people I liked, people who were around. Yeah. But what happened was I was painting basically for free.
Right.
So then I was like, well, maybe I should ask people who couldn't have a portrait, couldn't afford a portrait.
Right.
Because I was like, well, if I'm paying for free anyway, why don't I just offer
someone who can really appreciate it? Right.
Right. So I started painting like portraits of just mostly it was like different kinds of people who just really wouldn't be on the radar of being able to afford a portrait, or like people who are maybe left out of the portrait scene. Different kinds of minorities and stuff like that, which was fun. And, I got to meet a lot of different kinds of people and do work with them. And as I was working with them, it was all still about story. It was, who are you? What are the parts of your story that are important to you? How is, once I started like working with people who were like, more in touch with their culture, it was like, how is your culture?
Right.
Related to
so some of your portraits are very much environmental portraits, and then telling their story, but also telling the context, their environment story.
Right. So what happened was especially when I got into like cultures that were very connected to the land. So I remember, and each of these kind of builds up to my understanding of being reconnected to being Jewish. So I remember I painted these portraits with these Samoan women, right? Okay. The Samoans are indigenous to Samoa, and they have these like amazing tattoos It's like very traditional, and they have these like incredible not costumes, but outfits. And this woman that I worked with, she makes them, and I learned so much about their culture. And it was like the first time I had a new appreciation of like cultural objects and how they help you understand who you are as a culture. And I was like, and something that was in the back of my mind.
We got some
I was
of that.
to fill in or something, you know, like it was like kippah or something. It was just kind of like it's suddenly some neuron was like, oh, I remember that. Or they, you know, but it wasn't. I was still very low key at the time.
Okay.
And then then probably the next one was I worked with these an Aboriginal Australian mob called the Jabrung. That's kind of their land, and they were doing like a land protest movement, and I worked with them on and for that series. And like you said, it was environmental. So their whole thing was about how they're connected to the land. I learned about their stories and what it means to be specifically from that place and how they understand who they are as a people by like being there. And I worked with them for like a year. And it wasn't until the end of it. Oh, it was like almost a year from start to finish. You know, and it wasn't until towards the end I suddenly was like, I probably didn't even, I don't think I'd quite been like, oh, Israel, how does that, like Israel's not on my radar at this point still, but you know, I'm like it's like being Jewish is becoming more maybe relevant to me. I think maybe around that time I had also just started thinking like, oh, I remember the Chagim. I'd like to do the Chagim again at home. So just again, still not in the community, but just trying to play with like picking up some practice. You know, as I learn about these other people doing it.
Through seeing people on their journeys and on your journeys, seeing them and their connection to the things that they found valuable and meaningful and worth fighting for, you realize that of your own and your own culture.
Right. Like, because being like, especially portraits are so intimate. Like one of the things I love about portraits is they're incredibly intimate. Like if you think about, like for both you as the painter, for the subject, like most people, when I paint them, cry when they see it because what they're looking at, this is my theory, is really intense. They're looking at, I don't know how to say it. They're looking at the record of somebody like really looking at them. You know what I mean? Like, because that's what they're looking at you looking at them. And so it's really powerful to be like really seen as who you are.
Right.
And it's really good. I love it. It was a thing that I didn't know would happen when I started doing portraits, but it's really beautiful. It's like my favorite thing.
What's incredible is you've painted 90 portraits in the first 3 years. I'm sure you've painted hundreds and hundreds of portraits by now, and yet you just talking about portraits.
Yeah,
you feel that. You feel that in there. I can see it.
Yeah,
and that's phenomenal. That's absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, thank you.
How real it is to you, and you know,
and I think. You know, sorry.
No, finish.
Oh, I was gonna say, I think that's also what can be really powerful for the viewer as well. So when a viewer looks at a portrait, they're looking at the person, but they're also looking at the artist, looking at the person. And that again, it's a three-way intimacy that can be so, you know, really powerful, I think.
Right.
Which I love. And so exactly right. So I'm seeing other people in their journey and I'm on my journey and I get to really be in with them, right? Like that's kind of what I was thinking, you know? And it twigged for me at some point. I mean, it would have been sometime during COVID. It was sometime during COVID. I was like, oh, I'm Jewish and I've never painted a Jewish person.
Okay. Right.
So suddenly, right, so a few things happened all at once. That idea suddenly occurred to me, you know, after 8 years of painting. I was like, oh, wait a minute. This is like a lot of who I am.
Right. You're expressing others, but you're not necessarily expressing yourself and your own culture.
Totally.
Okay.
Right. And I was like, oh, this is, okay. So, okay, put a pin in it. Something to think about. And then I was working on this portrait series during COVID. So that was, which was just, again, COVID was a weird time. So we were doing, I had a good, I was doing a portrait series like that was, it was interesting, but it was maybe a little bit more removed from myself. It was less intimate. What order of things did things happen? So there was the idea. I think probably then there was a thing in Israel. It was in 2021, May 2021. I'm going to back up one sec. Okay, so at this time, I thought, oh, maybe I should like paint a Jewish person.
Right.
I still didn't really have any connections into the Jewish community because it's a tricky one to kind of get in with if you're not connected.
Okay.
And especially because I wasn't practicing. If I was like knew how to like
if you showed
rock
right,
up to a shul and feel comfortable,
if you showed up,
then
they would welcome you in.
Exactly, but specifically because I didn't know how to act religiously, I would say, right? That's the easiest way in.
Okay.
If you don't have that, then then it's tricky, I think, from the outside. Because if I'm like,
Chabad didn't find you, huh?
Look, there was this one time, the first time I ever put on tefillin, I was in Phnom Penh. I was working there for my just like, and I was not ready for this part of the journey, but I was kind of interested in finding challah for Friday, so I was like half trying to. And then the guy really wanted to put on tefillin, and I did, but it was not. Now it's fine, and I love it. But it was like a little too early for me.
You wanted challah, no strings attached, and
I went right. He
roped you in. He roped you in.
Well done, he did. And look, maybe he knew better. He knew best, right? Like maybe that was the push I needed.
But maybe that was right. That was a jump start. That was a jump start on your. So you did a lot of. So from there, did you dive head into Jewish portraits, or it was a gradual process?
So what happened was I still wanted to finish this thing with COVID,
right?
With COVID portraits, and which was not Jewish. And then this thing happened in Israel. So what was my point? I was connected to Jews online. That ended up being a bit easier for me. So on Instagram for the first time, I had a few Jewish friends. I found the Jewish artist community. There's that little Jewish artist community. So I found some of these people. And then there was basically, compared to now, a small war with Hamas, a light war in 2021. And compared to now, it was almost nothing. But it was like a big shock for me. It was a war. I'd never had Jewish friends during a war, especially I had a few who lived in Israel, and I'd never been online publicly as a Jew before, and this whole thing of anti-Semitism happened, right? Like this all, obviously I had little bits of it growing up. That wasn't new, but being so plugged in,
right,
and it was very big online, and it was so shocking to me. Like I was like, it really threw me, and I was that was the moment I was like, I was like, what? Like, I was like, what are people talking about with Israel? Like, I have no idea. I didn't go to Birthright. I was like, I don't have anything here. I didn't have any bad feelings about Israel. I didn't have any good feelings. I just had nothing. I was like, it was just like a Israel-shaped hole in my life as a Jew. And I thought, basically my thought was, as I said, creativity is my toolbox, right? I thought I have to go to Israel and find out, and I'll make some art about it because I don't know what to feel. I don't have any feelings, but now I have this so it was like everyone was telling me how bad I was as a Jew or as somebody Israel, and I had a bunch of terrible conversations with friends, and I was like, and I wasn't equipped to deal with it, and I didn't know how I felt about it, so I was like, I got to go and find out. So that's what led me.
No, that's incredibly powerful, because the other response could be, okay, so I don't know about it. The end. My life has been just fine till now. What am I missing after? Okay, they're fighting or whatever it is. Yeah, there's some history. There's, I'm Jewish. But it doesn't. But that you leaned into it. You really leaned into it. I mean, you did a 6-month journey of discovery through art in Israel.
For better or worse, that description of the other response doesn't even feel like it's possible for me. I'm like, is that a response? But that's just me, right? Clearly, that's
God bless you.
God bless you. Right? I remember, and this comes from probably my mom or growing up Jewish. Like, it definitely feels like it's connected to what it means to be a Jew to me. And I remember when I first was talking to this woman, Australian. We were talking about portraits, and she's not white, she's black, and she's from South Africa. And she said, the thing about portraits is they're political, right? Because no matter what, they're political. Because if you paint somebody, it means you've chosen to not paint somebody else. That idea, as a concept, right? This is like 3 or 4 years ago. Yeah, I can see. I probably feel like you now. Like, you're right. Like, not every portrait is political, but as a concept, that really helped me. And I thought, and because of this Jewish nature or whatever it is, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm leaning in and only doing political portraits.
Yes.
Because I'm like, well, obviously, right? So clearly that is just my response. I don't know if that's good or not. It's just, yeah. Yeah. So sorry. So I ended up doing Masa and Birthright kind of all at once because of COVID, and I was here for 6 months. And yeah, I got to be in Israel. I spent time living in Tel Aviv, and I traveled around. Like I said, I painted my first landscapes, which was a surprise. It was very like I just come off doing this very specific COVID project with portraits. And so I came in, I'm like, I'm going to do 10 more portraits of, Jewish something. And I quickly found out that that is not how you should be in it. Like, you shouldn't come to Israel with a specific plan.
Right. Okay. Don't be too goal oriented. Right. Be open to.
Be open to the Lizrom, right? Like, be open to flow. That's what's cool about Israel, right? But I didn't know that. I didn't know anything about Israel. So so in the end, I ended up with this not portrait, but art series that had some landscapes. It had some a soldier that I met, a friend of mine now. So some people that I met, and I had this idea for I wanted to do a series of Jewish history through focusing on Jewish women. So that's where I painted this ancient Israelite and I painted this kibbutznik. It was like, those are the two elements of that kind of series that came out. And, it just was kind of, it was a series about, what it was like to be here as a Jew and connect, go from being, not that I didn't know I was Jewish, but just going straight into being fully connected with being a Jew.
Right.
And I think it was some of my most powerful work because it's so personal in a way. And again, this is coming back to the Jewish thing, right? Now we're tying back it's like suddenly I'm doing this thing that it's interesting to be so intimate with your art in a way. I really showed myself.
That I don't know which one of the two it is, but that portrait of the strong woman holding a sheaf of wheat.
Yeah, the kibbutznik,
there's so much power in there. There's so much power. And I only saw it on my phone, briefly. I'd love to see the original.
Yeah.
But her pose, I mean, I don't know if this was intentional. I hope it was intentional. But there's that famous one, the we can
Rosie
do it.
the Riveter. Yeah.
Right. So taking, was that inspired by that to some degree? Okay.
Totally.
But I love that. I love that. And there's such strength, such power, and connected to the land, and she's working. She's not, a prima donna or whatever it is. She's really working, living the land, and that's a really powerful one. So
thank you. I think it became the image of the show, and it was okay. This is a quote. I don't know I don't know the not etymology. I don't know where it comes from. The provenance yet. I'll try and find it. So somebody said that all portraits are self-portraits.
Okay.
And I think the idea, obviously portraits are portraits of other people, but there's something about when you paint, you give yourself over to the painting, right?
Absolutely.
So I think I think what I was trying with that portrait, I mean, I was painting my friend Anita, and it was referencing the strong history of these amazing women and men who built the state of Israel and were able to connect to the land. But I think I must have been just trying to project this feeling of strength that I got from being here and connecting to my roots, and kind of it's overwhelming. This I don't know. It was
that's what you picked up. That's what you felt in the land, being strong in the land, being present in the land. Absolutely. And then within that is your landscapes, which are absolutely magnificent. I mean, you have the one, the Yerushalayim, from that spot where you're sitting, and I mean, to me, it's Rembrandt-esque. Your light more in your landscapes than in your portraits, especially your afternoon scenes, that you really blend, what you're saying and how you're saying so beautifully together. The technicals. To me was great. Again, I got to see it in person. I really want to see it in person.
Yeah,
but
wow.
It told the story so well. So
thank you. I really appreciate that. I mean, I think there's something about, I think this is just for me, my personal feeling, like technical skill or mastery by itself can be a little bit empty. But I think when you're able to, but I like working on it because it makes me feel like I can be more confident in the stories that I want to tell, or the scenes, or the images, or the feelings. Like, so yeah, I really, in the service of trying to tell like a story or a feeling, I love working on that. So thank you.
So it feels very much through your work that you are telling stories as you are. I mean, to contrast that is what I hate. You go to a place like MoMA and you just see Untitled 64, Untitled 72. It's like, come on, give us some context, give us some window in, and of course, I realize that it's very much is about its time, what was going on in context at that moment in history and art history to create that. But when you don't know it, and all it is Untitled 64, it's almost meaningless. And yet, on the opposite, I'm imagining it's your film background, but you really tell a story with each piece. And the films, the short films, I'm going to link it to the show notes. The short films that you put, the creation of the portrait, the meaning behind it, to me is such a powerful way of telling stories.
Thank you. I mean, specifically, that idea came from exactly the feeling you were describing. That not only is I think even worse than the crime of the MoMA portrait Untitled 64 being meaningless, is and maybe I'm projecting, but it feels like elitist in a way. Like, you should understand this, and if you don't, then that's on you. So you're an idiot. And I don't know when I got this idea, but I did. I mean, it always makes me feel a bit yuck. And I was like, no, thank you. And so starting maybe 5 years ago, and because of my film background, I kind of had the skills or the technical sort of experience. I basically thought, well, okay, it's my job as one of my two jobs as the artist. And I think it actually goes back to what you were saying.
How you share it with the world. Step 3.
Step 3. And so I kind of took it on myself. I was like, you know what? I'm the guide. That's part of my job. I need to make sure I don't need to tell you how to feel. I don't need to tell you what to think, but it's my responsibility to give you all the tools that I think you need to get started. And then what you do with that's totally up to you. That's your journey, and you'll give me something back that's even better than I could think of. But that's kind of where the film idea came from, so I started doing these, like, I wanted everyone to be able to understand the full story, and then they could appreciate the art. And, and I think as my art, maybe as I've gotten better as a painter, it's not that I wonder, I think this is a new thing I'm thinking about, with this new project I'm working on. I don't think I'll ever exactly stop doing the painting, the film parts, because like you said, it's really good. I want to make sure people can understand the context. But I think as I've gotten stronger as a painter, I can shift more of my storytelling into the painting. It's almost like, I don't think that I wouldn't exactly say that the films were a crutch, but there's a way in which, by being able to like just know how to tell more with paintings or with a series of paintings, I can get more out of that, and then the films become I don't know. Yeah, it's a different relationship, I've noticed.
Well, in today's Instagram, TikTok world, having a film is definitely a great first step to draw people into the work and create awareness about the work, and then hopefully invite people into, wherever it is that you're showing, to be able to see the works themselves.
There was I have to give credit where credit is due. There was a exhibition at the NGV, the Australian National Gallery, the one in Victoria. This was right when I thought of this idea. It was Van Gogh. Okay, it was a Winter Masters. It's your standard Van Gogh. But what they had done was, the first room you walk into was a giant screen, and it was like a 4.5 minute video that was letters Van Gogh had written to his brother, read by some actors, and there was some beautiful footage. But they had hidden the door behind the screen. It was so big, right? Which basically meant they forced everyone to sit there in the dark and kind of like have a calming experience, get into the feelings of like what it was like for Van Gogh and the emotions of Van Gogh. And then when the film's done, it's like, okay, now you can go and experience the art. And I was like, that's cool. Cause you, like you said, it's a big invitation. It snaps people out of what they're doing day to day, and they can kind of like connect with the art. It's cool.
That's wonderful. Yeah. To really invite them into the process of creation. Absolutely. So you did 6 months in Israel, and now you live in Israel. How long?
Right. So
you just went. You went back. You went back and packed up your stuff. How did that work?
I mean, it was 9 months. So 6 months. I look. Probably the first day, I was like, "All right, I'm moving here,"
Right.
Or at least I thought. After you hit the Tel Aviv beach for the first time, you're like, well, why wouldn't I live there?
Right.
No, it was, but I think really what happened was I was enjoying myself here, and I was really enjoying the energy here and the kind of the way people are. I thought, oh, it's never going to get easier to try living in Israel than it is now for me. I'm currently single, so it's only going to get more complicated.
Right.
So, but I had a work contract or whatever to finish. So I came back to Australia. It was good, actually. It was actually really nice because I spent the next 9 months doing my Aliyah, but also working on my show. And I was able, in a way, to like in a full circle kind of way, I was doing the show all about Israel. So it was really Jewish. I started going to shul again. In fact, because of Israel, I started going to shul.
Okay.
I started making Jewish friends in the Jewish community. Like, if anything, I finally was able to be part of the Jewish community just in time to leave. And it was
in Melbourne
because of this show. Yeah, it was kind of cool.
Right.
It was a good feeling. I know that I now have a place there in Melbourne, which is a good feeling. Yeah. So it took about 9 months.
Well, you left, if I could say this, you left as a complete Jew. As opposed to running away from Melbourne, in order to find your Judaism. But that you left on your terms.
It's like finishing the business or whatever. Like I always think that like it can be the advice that I was given and then give other people is like it's unless you're physically running away from danger and that's why you make Aliyah, that's totally fine. But if it's just like a general kind of decision to make Aliyah, if you're running away from something, your Aliyah is going to be hard. But if you're running towards something, it means that the challenges you'll be energized by the challenges. And, and so I think, it was really important for me in a way. I didn't plan this, but it was really important for me to finish up my business so I wasn't running away from Melbourne.
Right.
Yeah.
So has that increased coming to Israel now to live, to make Aliyah? How's that impacted your relationship to your Judaism and your Jewish practice? Because Israel is so broad judaically and religiously. Where did you find yourself?
I've gone, I think, so one of the things I really was, just because of this, like you said, Israel's so broad, I'm still kind of finding my speed, but it's really cool. I have so many options here. And so, I'm noticing like what kinds of like Shabbat service, like Kabbalah Shabbat services are like really my jam. Like I really like the ones with singing and dancing, which is lucky because a lot of them have that here. Like the big ones. I love that. And I'm able to, I don't know. I think one part of it is that part of my, like a big focus of my Jewish journey right now is the Israel part, if that makes sense. So like some people come here and are like, I'm going to go study Torah. And for me, my feeling is, well, I mean, there's some logistics. Like I need to learn Hebrew. I want to learn Hebrew, I should say. I want to learn Hebrew. I want to get set up as an artist here. And so it's almost like I'm putting down roots. I'm making friends in Jerusalem, which is where I live, but I'm just being very open and very kind of flexible. So I'm trying to go to a lot of different kinds of services and just like see all the different possible ways of being Jewish as I explore that through my art and the different.
Well, and as you know, Judaism is in the air in Israel. It's just there. It's a very different experience than being in Kew or Collingwood.
Totally.
So, Yeah, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. And as you said, you don't come to Israel with expectations. You allow room for the flow.
I think that's the best way to do it, right? Because it's like, I mean, you're in New York, right?
Yeah, close enough. New Jersey.
Is there New Jersey? Is there a similar energy when you're in New York, or is it like, as in, don't come with expectation, like plans, or is it a very Israel thing? I don't.
I don't know. I mean, the classic saying is if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere.
Right.
But I think you got to show up with a plan. You got to
Yeah.
hustle. You got to hustle a lot more.
Sure.
So if you're hustling, you have to have an idea of what are you
Yeah.
hustling towards.
Totally.
I think that would be, you know,
Totally. I definitely have that feeling here, but I feel like there's so many different directions and opportunities. Like, yeah, I've noticed that, like, if I'm too narrow, it's, just being open is really cool here,
yeah, very
Yeah.
much so.
Yeah.
So of course, how did October 7th impact all these areas of your work?
Sure.
Your work, your creative work,
Yeah.
you as now as an Israeli, as a
Yeah.
Jewish person. How unfortunately I haven't been to Israel yet since October
Yeah.
7th. I'm trying, but
You'll make
what
it.
is it like for you on the ground and as a
Sure.
creative? And then how has that impacted, if at all, your creative process at the moment in your processing?
Sure. I'm trying to think of what it was like. So when October 7th happened, I'd really basically just moved here. I was here for a couple of months. And not even, like, six
Wow.
weeks. Yeah.
Wow.
And yeah, I mean, I was living with my friend, and I wasn't doing a lot of painting yet.
Okay. You're just finding your feet.
And I was finding my feet. And then October 7th happened, and obviously it was like it was a shock, but maybe because I'd never experienced anything like it before. I also didn't really know. I didn't really have any boxes to put it in. I think, like, in a sense, Israelis or people who've been here through other wars, in a way, found it more shocking because they had more to compare it to.
This is
They had more.
relative to it was so shocking.
Correct. Whereas for me, my experience is like, I have no idea what's going on, really. And I'm
Right.
seeing the news, and Jerusalem's really quiet. Luckily I was in Jerusalem, and so there was no, like, in that first, like, month or whatever, there were a lot of rocket attacks, but almost none in Jerusalem. There's one
Right.
on the first day.
Right.
So my friends in Tel Aviv were going to the bomb shelter, like, a couple times a day, but
Right.
I wasn't doing that. So it was just a very weird time for me, and as
Yeah.
things settled in and I learned more, then it became kind of more affecting. I bumped into a rabbi from Brisbane, Rabbi Jaffe.
Okay. Sure. Yes.
He's great. I bumped into him on October 3rd. And I'd previously, for the last little bit of work that I was doing for my previous work, I'd been in Brisbane, and I had dinner by him. So he said, "Oh, this is October 3rd or something, or 4th. I bumped into him here, and he was like, "Oh, I've been meaning to talk to you. I want to, do a Chabad fundraiser, like, with one of your paintings." I said, "Sure." And October 7th happened, and I bumped into him again in the blood donation line the next day. We were all donating blood. And he said, "Look, obviously it's weird, but do you still want to do it?" So I was like, "Of course," And so I ended up, they were going to change the fundraiser to be about fundraising for Israel. So I ended up painting my first still life, which was tefillin. It was my roommate's tefillin. And it was,
I haven't
so
seen
that was
I haven't seen that piece.
yeah,
I'd love to see it.
I'll put it in the show notes for you, and then you can do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was, it was an interesting thing. I guess that was kind of my first feeling of, like, making art around October 7th, I guess. But it was very, like, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and it was hard for me to work anyway because I wasn't really settled. But I think, as we've been talking about, my only response is to run towards things, right? I don't have another choice. So probably by November, I decided that I have to make art about October 7th.
Right.
I didn't know what that meant yet. I just knew that that's what I was going to do. And over the was this June now. So I guess since then, it's coalesced. I went down south for like a week and a half in January and visited some of the sites and talked to people. And I was trying to be very open, and I'm still trying to be very open about open again to like the in this sense the previous. This is my point. I think the previous show I did in Israel about Israel made me realize not just don't be too focused, but that making the art can help you understand what you want to talk about. So because the ones before, I knew what I wanted to talk about, and that was the art I made, right? And then I was, it changes a little bit, but there's something about that first experience here where I was really like, okay, the feeling, the process of making art is the thing that helps you work it out a little bit, because I was so thrown by Israel. Right. And so because I had that experience now, and now we're talking about October 7th, and I don't think anyone knows how to feel about it or how to talk about it. So quite explicitly now, I'm making work about it. I'm working up to a show. I don't know how to talk about it. That's the point. The point is I have to make the art. That's the point. I have to make the art to help me understand how I feel and process the feelings. And my hope is that, by me processing the feelings by making the art, I can create a space for the people who see the art to
also process some of
it. That's the hope. That's the hope.
Have you found a creative community in Yerushalayim, in Israel? I mean, also to process collectively.
Totally. I mean, there's one of the things I love about Israel is not just the creativity of the people here. I mean, it's electric here. People are like driven, but they're also very open, and they're very collaborative, and there's a lot of different kinds of one thing that's really cool here I didn't know about. I don't know, maybe they've got it in New York or in America a little bit, but they definitely don't have it in Australia, is collectives seem like a big thing. So it's just a group of artists who kind of work together. I'm in a studio, and one of the women there is with half a dozen other artists, other women, and so they put on group shows. So they can always support. They make art together once a week. So
sure.
And I'm now kind of involved with another collective, and in that collective, there's a few people who are in other collectives, and it's a really cool. It must be maybe it's a Jewish thing. Israeli Jewish Israeli. Right. I don't know. I don't know where it comes from exactly, but that's a really cool thing. So there's this habit of creating these sort of little communities to you either share a space together, you do shows together, and it's really it's cool. It's really, really cool.
That really is. That's very powerful. I sit here in my studio. I go out, I do my things, but I'd love to have a collective like that. I mean, there have been things, there are things in New York area that we need more.
I think so. I think it's very cool. It's especially if you're in I got a little bit of it in Australia. In my shared studios, where I'd be in with, but that wasn't really working together. Whereas I think that's what's cool about the collective ideas. You're not just bouncing creative ideas off with other people, but you can work together. It's very easy to work together, or maybe you're doing
But also there's a deep underlying unity between people, just simply because we're Jewish in the land, and that alone. It's so obvious, it's so subtle, but it runs deep through a lot of interactions and through a lot of the work and the collective processing. October 7th didn't happen to one person, it happened to all of us, all at the same time, and everyone needs to process, and everyone, has.
And I one of the things that my friend told me, which was really powerful, he said that this was right after October 7th, maybe it was a month after or less. He's in Melbourne. And he was telling me he was really, really happy that I was here and not in Melbourne, because if I was in Melbourne, I would have to make work about the anti-Semitism and the other stuff going on. And by being here, I can I mean, I'm here, I'm in the land. I can kind of ignore that in a sense and focus on the sort of deeper emotional processing that needs to happen, about what actually happened,
Right. Right.
Which is not to say that the anti-Semitism isn't important, and there is some of that in my work but it's that there's a way, like, if you're in the diaspora, you're dealing with these two things at once.
Right. Right.
And yeah, I think that in a way, maybe the art would have been so colored by that, I couldn't have really been able to deal with this core trauma that we're all trying to deal with.
Right. I suppose I don't know. Just thinking now, is it a reflection of is it I am who I am because of I am, or I'm defined by others? And to the anti-Semitism, especially to someone who grew up without a strong Jewish background, that anti-Semitism can really define people or define their relationship to the Judaism. Whereas,
totally. I mean, it's kind of, I hate to give it credit, because it's horrific, but
right.
Yeah.
Right.
But it really makes you feel like a Jew when somebody is calling you a Jew.
Right. But that you're in Israel and processing from the space of an Israeli in his land, processing is
I think
different.
Maybe, and I think you also get it in like I think it's like the thing about that feeling of being defined as a Jew by somebody else is it's not a very constructive experience.
It's not empowering. It's definitely not
empowering. You can take it, and I think I was lucky that I was able to take that, the first one when it really happened a couple of years ago, and now this one where we're able to take it and construct it into a healthy expression of what it means to be Jewish, right? But by itself, right, it doesn't really have any constructive power.
Absolutely. I mean, there's so much richness, there's so much depth to Judaism, there's so much depth to Torah, there's so much depth to our culture that we could live in a desert for 40 years plus and just do our own thing and ignore the world and be religious and be Jewish and have a full love of God and have a full identity without other. Unfortunately, God has other plans, and so we're cast into the
work is not done.
Our work is not done. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you. Our work very much isn't done, and I look forward to seeing your next project and your project after that, and coming to meet you in Israel and visiting your studio and your collective. So thank you. And
thank you.
My pleasure. My pleasure. The way we end off here, because part of my vision with this podcast is not just to share interesting stories, but also to inspire hopefully the next generation of young Jewish creatives for them to find their orange socks. So what's your advice to young budding creatives at whatever age they are to find their orange socks, to find their creativity?
I always I got a couple of go-tos. What I want to tell you today. I think the thing that has helped me the most. I want to do like a kind of a new one. Like, I think. This is just the best advice that I ever learned. Is focus on the process. So I have to give credit where credit's due. I met a guy who's an amazing painter. He paints kind of fantasy art, and so he paints dragons. And people would ask him like, "Oh, I want to paint a dragon," and he said, "This is what he's telling me." He said, "People didn't really want to paint a dragon; they wanted to have painted a dragon. They wanted to have the outcome."
Yes.
He said it's easy to paint a dragon. You just sit in your room by yourself for 40 hours in the dark.
Yep.
Paint a dragon. And I think that really changed how I approached I wasn't trying to get better at making end results. I was trying to get better at enjoying the process, at doing good, like really just having a good time making the art, and learning to enjoy spending hours in the studio. And all of a sudden, if you can enjoy spending hours in the studio, then practice is easy, making art is easy, relatively.
Right. Something
beautiful
will come out the other side.
I think so, and if it doesn't, you enjoy the process.
Right.
So
right.
I think I just the idea of like, I always encourage younger artists I talk to like, really like find the process that you like. What's the thing that you can spend hours doing, and seeing if you can have your artwork be more of that bit and less of the other bit. And if there's stuff that you don't like, can you cut it out? Can you make it into something that you like? I'm the opposite to one of those people that's like, draw spheres for 10 years. You know, that style of, draw shaded. I don't know if that's like a good outcome, but this is for me. It's just like, love the process.
Just get into the process.
Yeah.
Okay. Wonderful. Avraham, thank you so much.
Thank you. This is so good. It's such a pleasure.
Looking forward to seeing you in person. And when you do, I have a gift for you. I have one of these. You'll get a brand new one. Is the Orange Socks painting. So
I love
this is a line of rabbis, and then there's one guy wearing orange socks.
That's
us. That's us. It's about finding and personalizing your journey and making it your own.
היום נעשה משהו בלתי נשכח